The Incomplete People, follow-up 3. This one is a big one. Y'all continue to shock and terrorize with your submissions. Keep sending them, but heads up. I think I have 2 more of these in me before the series will go on a temporary hiatus. So I was just listening to your whole story thing about incomplete people the other day, and the armless one about the lady made me think real hard. Like, that was a sixth sense of inspiration in its own right. So after thinking about it, and the idea of her kept coming back like she was haunting me, I drew her. I couldn't help but think of the sick noise her biting through someone's arm was as I drew it. Here's to hoping it won't bite me in the butt later. The Armless Woman by Messy Sketch. Incomplete Person Sighting by I Might Be a Weasel. I tend to not use my living room much. Usually I'm watching TV in the kitchen or playing video games in my bedroom. But about 1.5 years ago, I started getting into watching movies. And for that, I started hanging out in the living room a lot more. Bigger TV. About 3 months ago was the first time I saw him. Just glimpses at first. But it started lingering longer and longer. Now I'm numb to him. I've been calling him the couch potato. A morbid sense of humor helps when there is a limbless man in your house that everyone claims you're making up. No arms, no legs, just bloody stumps, like they have been freshly ripped off, and a face frozen in horror. I'm not sure if he's tried to hurt me. Could be that he wants to and can't. You know, no arms and legs. Usually he just stares at me. Eyes follow me wherever I go. When I get close, he shakes like he's trying to move. But he stops when I sit down. Why do I sit next to him? Watching the TV with him is the only thing that gets his eyes off of me. If I'm there and the TV is on, he will watch it with me in silence. A weird sort of equanimity, but I'll take it. At least horror movies never scare me anymore. It's Right There by Flameheart. Dude, now I'm freaking out. 2 hours after I watched your initial video on the Incomplete People, I heard something come from my dark hallway. It was barely over a whisper, but it said things like, watch your head, break a leg, you have 1 foot in the grave. It freaked me out, but no one else could hear the voice. I finally saw it. Well, I don't know how to begin. It was sitting down in a fetal position, facing toward me. It had no torso, its limbs and head just floating there in the dark. Its eyes were missing and the left leg and foot were gone too. The worst was the smile, or lack thereof. Its mouth was missing, a chunk ripped off its face, yet I could still tell it was smiling at me. I just stared at it, not being able to look away. Then it sat up and walked, or glided toward me. I was sure I was going to die. But all it did was speak again. What it said will haunt me for the rest of my life. You're lucky. I'm not looking for your body parts. But that doesn't mean I won't be watching you. Just from behind the shadows. Sweet dreams, little one. That's when I blinked, and it was gone. I haven't seen it since. Please, I'm scared it will come back. I've been locking myself in my bedroom at night, but I can still feel that thing is still out there watching me every night. I don't feel in danger, but how long will that last? Eyeless Figure. I'm so glad I found a group of people who can understand what I'm going through. I really need to talk about this. It started about 2 weeks ago. I was coming home from a late shift at my local pub when I first saw it. A person, or at least what looked like one at first, it was standing in the middle of an empty car park, its gaze fixated on me. I couldn't make out the face clearly, but there was something really unsettling about it. I tried to get a better look, but I decided it wasn't worth provoking. Thankfully, it was only a few moments later when my bus came. When I got on, I asked the bus driver if he knew what the random man in the car park was doing. The bus driver turned around and looked right at it. He swung back around and said in the most confused tone, "What man?" I brushed it all off as evening exhaustion and decided to just go home. The morning after that I got up for work, I opened up the blinds and I saw it right across the street from my apartment. Staring right at me was a humanoid figure with no eyes. Where I tried to meet its gaze, I just saw a black void, as if staring into the back of its head. It was just harrowing. It just stared at me. I don't know how else to put it, but it felt as if it could really see me. That day I called in sick and didn't leave the house once. From that day on, it followed me everywhere. No one else seems to notice it. My friends think I'm joking when I talk about the blind man who won't leave me alone. I see it out of the corner of my eye, standing in the shadows, always watching. When I look directly at it, its expression is blank, lifeless. I hate it. A few nights ago, I woke up to the sound of scratching. The room was dark, but I could feel its presence. It was standing somewhere in my room. I don't know how or where, but I had never been more scared in my life. I froze, unable to move or even breathe. I had never been a religious person, but in that moment, I prayed that God would save me. Since that night, I've tried everything to get rid of it. I've spoken to priests and consulted psychics, but they're useless. Tonight, I'm keeping a gun on my bedside table should anything happen. I'm not going to assume bullets work on this thing, but if it really comes to it, then they'll at least work on me. If anyone wants to take something from this, please believe me. The incomplete people are real, and they won't stop until they're whole again. If you see one, ignore it. The moment you become curious is the moment you sign your death warrant. If you don't hear from me after this email, then assume the worst. I Saw One When I Was 17 by Nathan Gillespie. I was about 17 when I first saw him, or it. The semantics don't really matter. One day I walked into the school bathroom and washed my face after a random nosebleed. I closed my eyes to wash off the rest of my face, and when I opened my eyes, what do I see but a man, at most in his 30s, behind me. I was startled. I thought I was alone, and I didn't see or hear any of the stalls behind me open or anyone walk in. I turned back to glance at him directly. He was average looking, and he was wearing jeans and a gaudy green turtleneck. That was weird for sure. I give nothing more than a passing glance out the window, and what do I see? I see him again, and it's like he's staring right at me with those haunting, piercing gray eyes. And then the bus lurched forward, and I wouldn't see him again for another 2 weeks. I was in a movie theater with my girlfriend. I was sitting on the edge of the third row, and we were well into the movie when a man walked out from one of the aisles and in front of the screen. You think that would have drawn the ire of everyone else in the room, but they just kept watching the movie. I was about to say something when I realized it was the same man in the same clothes. What voice I could have mustered to tell the man blocking the view was stripped from my throat as he began walking down the aisle and towards me. Much of his face was obscured by the darkness of the theater, being that it was facing away from the screen, but I could tell its eyes were wide open. Once he reached me, he leaned down until his nose was level with mine. I turned my head, his eyes met mine. Silently, his once mild frown turned upwards until he was smiling ear to ear with teeth bared almost like a rabid dog. I had almost made a motion to push him away when his own hand reached up to the collar of his turtleneck. He slowly lowered the neckband to his collarbone, but it was too dark in the theater to make out any detail, until a bright white light flooded the theater, and I saw what he was showing me. There was a massive gaping hole in his neck. I mustered the willpower to push it away from me and bolted for the exit. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I do remember waking up in a hospital and every part of my body hurt. Both my legs were broken, and so was my left arm. I was completely alone. There were no doctors or nurses around me until what had to have been 3 excruciating hours later when my girlfriend walked in to visit me. She told me I'd run out the theater screaming into traffic, so I guess that settles it. I asked her about the person in front of the movie screen, and she gave me the most incredulous look ever. I was in the hospital for a few days after that, and I could swear I saw eyes outside the window sometimes. Once I even woke up in a sweat, reliving that moment in my dreams, only to have an uncanny sensation of being watched. I still have those night terrors, and sometimes I see the man again through the windows or out in public or in the peripherals of my vision, always with that feral smile, always with a hole in his neck. I saw your video about incomplete people, and I think what I saw might have been an incomplete person. I really hope it isn't. I really hope it isn't. The Corner Creeper by Josh Guzman. Hello. Seeing these videos on YouTube recently has lifted a small bit of weight off my shoulders, but has also added an empathic sadness. You see, I believe myself to be the only one, and although this entity has terrorized me for the past 2 months, I had long given up as finding any sort of solution. I have seen many different examples in your first 2 videos, but they all seem to have one thing in common: a goal. The incomplete person, as you would call them, seem to all have the goal of completing themselves. My case, however, seems to only have the goal of terrorizing me. I want to begin this story where it started, the deep, deep end of a YouTube rabbit hole. I remember it was one of those nights that I couldn't fall asleep, but I had to work in the morning, so I thought listening to some podcasts or something would help me get to bed. I was a bit of a horror fan, especially for analog found footage, so I decided to look up any upcoming shows, and that's where I found it. An untitled video posted about 2 weeks before. I would give a proper date, but since my first view of the video, I haven't been able to find anything on it, and the video seems to have been deleted from YouTube. In it, a video of a door frame, a man breathing heavily, camera shaking just a little bit. 4 simple words that shake me to my core still to this day. You see it, right? The video ends. At the time, I was convinced that the video scared me because I thought the man was crazy. Then I looked away from the video and saw it too. Just a man, but only the right half. At least, that's all I know he has. He's always creeping behind the corner or something, never showing too much of himself. However, every time I see him, he seems to be smiling wider and wider and wider. His eyes seem to grow larger and larger, to the size of teacups, and all he seems to do is look at me. He just looks at me and smiles. He shows up at the grocery store, the barber, when I'm in the bathroom. He will find a corner and just look at me from behind it. I'm not sure why or what the reason is, but it seems to just want to terrorize me. That's all he's been doing for 2 months now. I watched the solution video that you sent, but I don't want to get close enough to figure out what I need to do to save myself. I look forward to more information. Please Help Me by Maximus Dork. It's been over a year. I started seeing it after I had to go to the hospital. It was just standing in the room. It's missing its eyes and the lower half of its face and its neck. It always seems to stare directly at me. It gets closer when I take my eyes off it. It's right up next to me, and I could look down into the gaping hole into its chest. I tried to tell the nurses, but they dismissed it as a hallucination. I got referred to see a psychiatrist. I've been on multiple meds that's supposed to stop it, but I still see it. It was everywhere. It was at my job, my college, the grocery store, the gym, my favorite restaurant. Anywhere and everywhere I go, it's there, and it keeps getting closer when I don't look. I lost my job, I quit school after failing all my classes, I lost my boyfriend and my friends. The only place it doesn't follow me is my apartment, but it waits outside. I stop leaving my apartment if I can avoid it. And every time I do, I barely look away from it. I'm alone now. I sit here in my room. Nothing feels the same anymore. I don't enjoy what I used to. Every time I have to get my delivered groceries from the doorstep, it's there. I'm waiting for the day that my apartment door isn't enough to hold it back. I know it'll come. I need help. Please, I beg you. The Serpent Sailor by Lucy Heartquake. I know it's a hopeless question to ask if you see him. Not even the gulls are disturbed. He's a slithering skeleton with no legs, dragging himself forward using his arms. On his head is an old sailor's cap. I think he might have been a freighter man trawled up from the icy waters of Gitche Gumee. Every day he's moved farther from the water. I can hear him now, clambering his way up to the lighthouse wall. His shadow stretches across the lake. Endless Spiral by D. Ramsier. Your video helped me put a name to something I've been seeing for years. It's a woman, I think. It's hard to tell. Her body doesn't fit together. It's as if you bored a hole into her stomach and then started to cut a perfectly symmetrical spiral outwards from there. It's a hypnotic void, passing through arms, legs, and head. Every time I look at her, it's as if I can't ever look away again. If it wasn't for the sheer panic, I don't think I'd ever have been able to stop staring. It's been a long time though. Panic fades. Even terrifying monsters can become routine. I dread the day that I accidentally let my guard down enough to let it do what I think it wants to do to me. Walk toward it. Ever since I was a child, I would see it. It first appeared on the ceiling above my bed. It appeared to be a heart in veins latching to the surface. The heartbeat and the blood oozed out of its veins. I would see it everywhere. School, park, work, college. Honestly, it's become the norm for me. I was actually sent to a mental institution at one point because I had a breakdown. I just told everyone I stopped seeing it, but that's a damn lie. Just this morning I saw it latching onto the window, freaking the hell out of me. And after seeing your videos, I'm scared that it might be my heart. Heliotro Cypher, who you can find their artwork listed here, has shared 6 photos of incomplete people that they have encountered. For years, I have seen several headless, necklace, and what looks like walking trypophobia. These are my favorite incomplete people. I'm not sure why they specifically are more common in my area. I've attached some of the sketches and doodles I've made. Most are taken in public areas, watching from a distance. Have you seen an incomplete person? Then email me at doyouseeincompletepeople@gmail.com. The scariest ones might make it into a future update. Remember, every email needs to grant me permission to use it and how you would like to be credited.